This episode is brought to you by Disney's Young Woman and the Sea, streaming on Disney Plus this Friday.
I've decided to swim the English Channel.
A woman? I believe she'll die in that water.
From producer Jerry Bruckheimer and director Joachim Roning comes the must-see true story, Daisy Ridley.
I go to England or die trying.
Trudy, you don't have to do this.
Don't let anyone take me out of the water, no matter what.
Disney's Young Woman and the Sea, rated PG. Parental guidance suggested. Streaming on Disney Plus this Friday.
Brew Strong is brought to you by Blickman Engineering, home of the top-tier brewing stand. Visit them online at blickmanengineering.com.
It's time for the beer radio you've been looking for. This is the show that dispels myths, tackles the toughest topics, and makes no apologies for geeking out on beer. Hosted by two guys that drink before they think. Jamil Zainashev and John Palmer. This is Brew Strong.
Hey, howdy, hey, my brewing brothers and sisters.
Good evening, Brew Strong. How you doing?
See, every time I expect greetings, and then, something else comes out, and I'm like, oh.
I'm a man that likes variety. What can I say?
I'll add that to my list of what you don't know about my friend John Palmer. He's a man who likes variety. Of course, now you know that, so I can't use it anymore. You got to tell me all those things in private. And then I can utilize them.
I'll send you emails about Tabasco sauce and ketchup for French fries.
Well, see, now again, you're ruining it.
Right. Okay.
You got to keep it off the air so I can use these in future segments. Yeah,
fried eggs on pizza.
Right, because coming up later in the show, you're not going to want to miss it. It'll be another segment of what you don't know about my friend John Palmer. Yeah. It's a good one today, a real good one.
I'm sure they're riveted.
Well, they will be riveted when we have a competition, a trivia challenge at the BNA party for people that know John Palmer trivia.
Where they can win an autographed book or something?
Yeah, autographed boob, whatever.
Okay, I could do that.
Right, yeah, don't want to give out a book.
Okay, we got a plan. All right. Right. And the winner can have an autograph anywhere on their body. You'll do it. You can whip out their junk or whatever, and you'll sign away in Sharpie. Mm-hmm. Yeah, watch it be McDowell that wins. I mean, he's already got one signature, so.
Right. So you can sign away. So we'll do a trivia contest.
Okay.
And it'll be trivia of things about John Palmer. So I think people do want to pay attention to these things.
Yeah, I think we have a lot of giveaways to do at BNA 6.
Ooh, there you go.
And I think a little bit of Palmer trivia based on this segment is a great idea, Jay-Z.
There you go. See, it has a value.
Okay.
More than curious cosmetic value or whatever, right? You would say. All right. And just speaking of curious cosmetic value, you should look at our good friend John Blickman.
Yes. Curious?
Yes.
Yes. Curious cosmetic value. I don't know what that really means, but
other than he looks great in a good blush.
Yeah, right. Put a little rouge on that boy, and
Right.
Oh, he's a wonderful guy. He's a real funny guy too, and good sense of humor, and just a lovely person to talk to. So if you get a chance, if you're coming out to the Homebrewers Conference, go check it out. Blickman Engineering will be there. They'll probably be showing some new secret thing that John Blickman came up with. and they'll have a lot of their other gear there that you can touchy-feely and check it out and see, ask questions about how it all works. And they're real nice folks. So go up and shake John Blickman's hand, or the hand of any of the Blickman staff there, and tell them, hey, thanks a bunch for sponsoring Brew Strong. We really appreciate it. I love the show, and it's great that you guys pay for it so we can listen to it. And if you get a chance, go to BlickmanEngineering.com. Check out what they got there.
Ends.
Yeah, if you can't go to the conference, it's going to be 1,900 people. Yeah. If you can't go to the conference, if somehow you missed out on tickets, go to BlickmanEngineering.com, like John says, with 2 N's, Blickman with 2 N's. And they got a lot of great information there and pictures of the stuff they sell. So check it out. All right. Today is a live Q&A session. If you listen to the show live, there's a chat now button, and you can click on that, and that takes you to a screen. You type in whatever name you want to use. There's no password or anything, and you jump right into a chat, live chat, where you can share information with the others. And then Justin is checking out that live chat, and you can ask questions through there of John and myself. Otherwise, you can send in your questions to brewstrong@thebrewingnetwork.com, and eventually, it may take several years, but eventually we will get to all your questions for the Q&A show. All right, why don't we kick it off with a good one here, Justin?
You got it. I think this one's for Palmer. As our resident,
because it has something to do with metallurgist.
Yeah, our resident metallurgist, exactly. So Palmer, Robert writes in. He says, "Gentlemen, I'm crafting a hop strainer for my brew kettle out of stainless steel mesh. The strainer is a 5-inch diameter cylinder with a mesh bottom and a stainless steel collar. The original thought was to sew the bottom on with stainless steel or copper wire, but that has proved too tedious. John, you mentioned in How to Brew that silver solder is used in 90% of mechanical fasteners in the home brewery. So my question is, what are your thoughts on silver soldering the mesh together? Would it work? Would it be okay to have in the brew kettle? Or would it be too much exposure? Thanks in advance for doing what you guys do." From Robert.
No, that'll work. The silver tin solder that's used for plumbing, you can get it at any hardware store, for home plumbing use. That'll hold the mesh on. The trick is going to be getting the heat in there and getting it to flow and not just burning the thing up. Because depending on the wall thickness differences between the cylinder and the mesh, you may end up overheating the mesh as you're trying to get the solder to flow and stick to both parts. So watch out for that, and depending on how fine the mesh is, you may experience the solder wicking into the mesh, capillary action, and end up with a just mesh full of solder instead of bonding to the cylinder. But it's a good method to try. You may be able to just attach a couple corners, say 4 corners or 4 diametrical points on the cylinder to the mesh.
There's
that may be sufficient.
In the cylinder, are there?
Yeah, well, okay. The four compass points. How about that? 90 degrees apart, or
right? Because if you turned it, the compass directions would all change.
Yeah.
Would there be a better way to assemble this that you can think of, John? Would it be a food grade epoxy or something like that, or?
Well, actually, that might work. Because the temperatures aren't very high, and a lot of epoxies will take those temperatures. Being a metallurgist, I've never really looked at organic substances very much for attaching things, but I'm sure people have done it. Because people talk about building mash tuns using epoxies all the time. Mm-hmm. Another way to do it may be to scrounge around and find another stainless steel metal cylinder that is just a little bit oversized, and so you could just do a strictly mechanical fit up and do it that way without soldering. There's a lot, stainless steel cookware, in terms of thin pots and what have you, are really available. So I'm sure you can find, two parts that fit together quite well and do a mechanical slip fit that way.
Okay.
All right. Here's another one. Kevin from Kalamazoo, Michigan writes in, I've started using a new method to control my fermentation. I've not heard this particular method mentioned before on the podcast, so I'd like to share my procedure and ask for any critique from you guys. I've got a 40-gallon Rubbermaid storage container that I fill with 10 to 15 gallons of water. I bought an aquarium heater with a temperature control to regulate the temperature. The container allows me to regulate 2 fermentation vessels at once. My beers ferment in a basement, which has temps that stay around 60 fairly consistently. I have no problems with temps getting too high, but I need a system which would allow me to achieve and maintain an appropriate temperature. If you have any comments or potential concerns, it would be appreciated. From Kevin in Kalamazoo.
Well, for me, the drawbacks, I think, to that, trying to do 2 fermenters in that pool, he's not really controlling the temperature of the fermenters, I think. He's not measuring the temperature of the beer inside the fermenters and the activity that's going on. He's rather probably measuring the temperature of the water and controlling that, which is, it's a little better than controlling like ambient air temperature. But, it has the same kind of negative effects where, whatever's going on in the fermenter, you're really not, responding to that. You're just kind of holding a water temperature. It's a, fairly useful way of controlling temperature. As a matter of fact, in the book by Homeboy and Dog Meat, the yeast book, which you can find in the Brewing Network store,
yep.
It the wattage of the aquarium heater you would need is, the calculation for that is in there.
Interesting.
In there.
In the book.
Wow.
In there. Amazing.
Yes. It's all in there.
So it hasn't been found on a podcast like he says, but it is in the book. Which wait, what's a book again?
A collection of paper pieces you use to, wipe with, I don't know, Homeboy and Dog Meat. Look it up.
Awesome.
So, that would be one concern there. And then also kind of the, lag, as far as, again, responding to, temperature changes, things like that. But it's certainly better than nothing. I would personally use just a heater from a heating pad from Walmart or something like that, or
like
you
can
get a firm wrap, which that's what I use, because you can wrap them around nicely around the which is the insides from the heating pad. Essentially, you can wrap it around the fermenter, and then you can monitor the temperature of the fermenter itself. Now you can only do one fermenter at a time like that, but that's really effective and gives you I think a better more responsive control over what's actually happening in the fermenter. So
yeah. But still, I think that's a pretty good approach that Kevin has.
Right. Absolutely. Nothing wrong with that. All right, let's do this. Let's take a short break, and when we come back, I'm going to tell you something that you don't know about my friend John Palmer. Back after this.
From the stovetop to a camp burner to some kind of brew stand, most homebrewers follow some version of this progression. With each move, a homebrewer will often have to change a lot, if not all, of their equipment. Until now, Blickman Engineering brings you the top-tier brewing stand, the only brewing stand that grows with you. For example, buy a top-tier floor-standing burner now, and it'll bolt right to your top-tier brewing stand when you're ready for all-grain brewing. The top-tier brewing stand is perfect for 5-gallon to 20-gallon batch sizes. Its modular design is adjustable and accommodates everything from small footprint coolers up to 30-gallon pots. How does the top-tier brewing stand do it? At its core is a strong, heat-treated, and anodized aluminum main post. On all 4 sides are built-in T-slots for the adjustable heavy-gauge stainless steel shelves and beefy burner tiers. The tiers accommodate any manufacturer's pots or coolers up to 21 inches in diameter. Best of all, not only does the top-tier brewing stand grow with your skills and equipment, but it easily knocks down for long-term storage or transport, too. The top-tier brewing stand from Blickman Engineering. Learn more at blickmanengineering.com and to find a local Blickman retailer. And start brewing from the top tier.
Hi. I have a sixer of Lagunitas in the icebox. My roommate's gone for the weekend, and I'm wearing something flimsy.
Listen, baby, I told her not to call me after 8. I'll talk to you tomorrow. I gotta go.
Who is that? Your girlfriend? You loser.
Shut up, Doug. Did you guys get the cauldron set up on the altar of my art?
If you weren't so busy getting booty calls, you'd know that.
The hurricane furnace is using propane while you guys talk.
All right, I'm using the scroll of Mosher to boil the first decoction.
Nope, it's scorched. What do you do?
Frack, scoop it out and try again. Doug, use your math rake.
You took too long. The color is now darkened past the point where you can still call it a Pilsner.
This sucks.
I hate it when Greg's the brewmaster.
What's this? Poindexter Urkel?
Dude, can't you see we're in the middle of a brew session?
Is that an actual beer?
Yeah, I crafted it. I don't really use the dice anymore. I'm a 10th level beer nerd.
Are you a 10th level beer nerd? Do you belch White Labs 833 and crap Simcoe? Then you're in good company at Northern Brewer. Northern Brewer has all your beer nerd needs. Ingredients, equipment, and knowledge 24 hours a day at northernbrewer.com. Plus, fast, cheap shipping. Only $7.99 for the contiguous USA. And check out Northern Brewer's huge selection of dorky beer kits, including the Cylon Detecting 3-Hearted Ale and the collector's item Super Alt.
Mine's in mint condition because it's still in the box.
Make 10th level at northernbrewer.com.
Whether I'm making me dry stout or rebuilding me kegs, I head to the heart of dear Dublin for me homebrewing supplies.
You head all the way back to Emerald Isle just for a wee batch of grain or a bit of keg tubing?
No, you moronic waste of liver. Dublin, California. I go to Hoptech.
For 30 years, Hoptech in Dublin, California has been supplying homebrewers with malt extract, fresh grains, hops, spices and sugars, hop oils and extracts, and much more. Hoptech is one of the first homebrew supply shops on the internet and is proud to offer award-winning beer kits, both online and in their store.
Mention the BN Army for a 10% discount off your order.
The store is open every day except Wednesday, or shop online at hoptech.com anytime. Hoptech is run by passionate, award-winning brewers who live, love, and travel for beer and bring their experience to the store for you.
If you don't want to visit Dublin, just call toll-free 800-DRY-HOPS or go to hoptech.com.
Visit Hoptech today in Dublin, California and at hoptech.com.
Nico, listen, our lawyers said that we had to do this for 1 hour, and after this, we don't have to talk to each other for 3 more months to the next meeting.
Kids. Come on, let's get out of here.
I'm supposed to have more lines. I'm the professional. Hey, it's Sully.
And I'm Nico.
And we opened the 21st Amendment 10 years ago at 563 2nd Street in San Francisco, just 2 blocks from Giants Park, to make great beer and have a great time doing it.
That's right, because to us, the 21st Amendment is more than just the right to make beer. It's the right to experiment, to be innovative, and just do things differently. And so now, we're putting our craft beer in cans.
That's right, cans. You can find our world-famous Hell or High Watermelon Wheat Beer at Brew Free or Die IPA in the Northeast, Northwest, parts of the Midwest, and Alaska, in cans and on draft. So next time you're at your local neighborhood pub or good beer store, be sure to ask for 21st Amendment in cans.
Because everyone likes it in the can.
Tasty crack cans.
Tasty crack can.
Hilo, what's it feel like?
Take awesome and multiply it by 2.
Yeah!
Spraying live beer radio all over your face.
Can't get any better than this, baby!
It's the Brewing Network.
Back to your hosts, Jamil Zainasheff and John Palmer. Putting the testicles in technical. This is Brew Strong.
All right, we're back. It's time for another segment called, I love to call, What You Don't Know About My Friend, John Palmer. His favorite fruit is the quince. The quince. All right.
I thought that's pronounced quince.
Quince. Well, maybe it is. Maybe it is. I don't know. It's your favorite fruit. What the heck? All right. What you don't know about my friend, John Palmer. All right. We're doing a live Q&A show. What's the next question, Justin?
All right, here's a good question from Chris in Pennsylvania. He says, hey, guys, I had a question relating to repitching yeast from high-gravity beers. I've done it twice and had great success and broke the rules both times.
No.
He says, meaning
Rule breaker.
Meaning that I repitched from a high-gravity beer to a lower-gravity one, as well as repitched to a completely different style. Both times, things went just fine. So I'm wondering if there is any internet lore on this topic that you could debunk, or was I just very lucky both times? What do the craft brewers do, especially the ones that make a lot of high-gravity beers and also routinely repitch? Thanks from Chris.
Oh, well, it's really interesting. It's a good question. It's really interesting that was asked because, we did this yeast panel at the CBC, and one of the people in the yeast panel was Mitch Steele from Stone. And one of the things that I found real interesting was that the yeast that they harvest for repitching, they harvest it off their IPA. So they have their levitation, they have lighter beers, and that's what they were trying at first. But they got much better results from the IPA. And the reason that they got better results from the IPA was that it's the beer that they brew most often. So the yeast is always the freshest possible. And the thing that they needed to adjust for is, the bitterness that's carried over, things like that. But, it was the highest vitality and viability yeast that they could get their hands on. So that's why they repitched from that. So, I think that, in the home brewery, doing the same thing, I think that that's a valid reason, the yeast is fresh, rather than harvesting from a low gravity beer and sitting on the yeast for 3 weeks. If you can harvest from an IPA, a strong IPA, that day and pitch it that night or the next day, that's a better choice than the one that's been sitting for 3 weeks.
Yep.
Now, the thing you need to be aware of when you're making, highly bitter beers or hop character beers or really dark stouts or things like that, you'll get carryover of bittering compounds and hop flavor, and also the roast malt character and color. Smoked malt will carry over, things like that. It may not be huge. It depends on the beer you're going to do. If you're taking some ultra hoppy dark stout and pitching into some light American lager, you're probably going to taste it. So you'll need to make some adjustments if you're varying your pitches from harvesting from a really bitter IPA to a malty mild or something like that. Then the bitterness carryover is going to be different.
All right, I got a good similar question from another one of our listeners who's in the chat, live in the chat today. Bike Foolery is in there, and he says, I've been keeping WLP 545, which is one of the White Labs Platinum strains. Says, I've been keeping it alive for 7 beers, 7 generations. I've been top cropping off of a simple 4% Monk's Table beer. What are common off flavors to be looking for as I attempt to keep this strain going until the new one, the Platinum strain, comes out again next December? He says, yes, Jay-Z, I've read the yeast book, but I am curious from your homebrewing perspective. He even was listening to our Anchor show where they were talking about using the same pitch of yeast without a fresh pitch for years now. One thing he did notice was a larger sulfur nose on the starters he uses to build the cell count back up for the next years. But the beers have been good and attenuation consistent. So I guess the main thing is, what off flavors will he start to pick up as it gets to be too old or too many gens?
Well, it's not necessarily too many generations. It's too many generations when you get contamination, when you get mutation, cell mutation, and the pitch starts to drift to a different type of character. Now, if it drifts in a way you like, and you're selecting from beers that do well, and you're repitching that, then there is no limit to the number of generations. And when especially when you're top cropping, you're getting really healthy active yeast. If you're doing it right and you're keeping it clean, there may not be any limit there. I'd say, let taste be your guide. And if you start to taste something off, then of course you've reached your limit for some reason. But, top cropping is a great way to go. That's why you can, somebody like, Anchor can go a long time, or, somebody, some of these English breweries can go a long time, harvesting yeast. Palmer, have you ever done any top cropping at all?
I have, but not in the last few years. I think you're right. The fact that he is top cropping rather than taking it from the bottom means that he is. I mean, with good sanitation and so on, is probably really reducing his contamination of the yeast potentially, and
you're getting that real healthy yeast off the pitch, or off the fermentation.
Yeah, it hasn't gone through any settling, any difference in flocculation and so on.
Well, because when you're harvesting off the bottom, you're getting, those yeast that they've sort of kind of made it into fermentation and then just fell out, and they don't really do well, and you're getting bacteria, you're getting just all sorts of stuff in there.
Yeah.
Top cropping, you're just getting healthy yeast.
Yeah. Now, of course, he is kind of selecting for a top cropping style. I mean. So it's gonna keep going that way, and he'll probably, I don't know how his clarification or flocculation is going to proceed as he keeps going down that path. Maybe it'll become more powdery, like some of the English yeasts that are great top croppers, but they have a hard time settling out without findings. He may experience that.
Well,
can you think of any off flavors that might be more prone to, I don't know, bubblegum or
not necessarily? That's a whole different characteristic. But the top cropping yeast tend to be good flocculators, because part of what happens in the yeast rising to the surface is the yeast clump together. They're carried to the surface on CO2 bubbles. And that's what brings them to the surface. If lager yeast don't tend to top crop well because they don't flocculate well. So you can get. I've got some West Yorkshire yeast that I got from Y Yeast to do the Black Sheep Brewery beers, and I'll tell you, that stuff, that is such a top cropper. You'll brew the beer and you'll see this giant layer of yeast on top of the beer, and you're thinking, okay, it's ripping along in fermentation. And if you don't look carefully, you won't notice that it's finished with fermentation. The yeast is dropped completely clear in the bottom, but there's a big pile of yeast still at the top. It just sits there forever. And it very flocculent and drops real clear, but it'll stick to the top. So it depends on the yeast, and I think like John's saying, you can be careful that you're not selecting just for one characteristic, and all of a sudden you get some sort of change. But if the beer is turning out the same, and you just notice a little extra sulfur tends to be a sign of stress. So. All yeast, when they're stressed, they produce more sulfur. So that may be some clue as to, your process that you might want to look into.
Okay. Here's a good, if we could squeeze this one in, a good newbie question that I've asked myself. I think I've even phoned you up about it, JZ. This is from PKRID. I don't know how that's supposed to be in the chat room. He says, my beers seem to continually ferment, always bubbling in the airlock, until I finally cold crash it. They seem to go on for longer than 2 weeks for most beers. Is this due to a low mash temp, or do I need to pitch more yeast? The beer seems to come out good. I even got a gold in my first competition. I know I've called you about this constant bubbling airlock thing in the past. So what do you have to say to that, guys?
I would suspect something other than yeast if it just keeps going and going and going. But if he's gotten a gold in a recent competition, I guess I'd have to ask the question, how old was the beer when it was submitted? But in my experience, if the airlock keeps on bubbling, just one a minute, or every 30 seconds or something for weeks on end, it means there's a wild yeast in there that's eating everything up.
Mm-hmm.
So the longer you leave it, the more attenuated it'll become.
Right. If you see that 4 weeks out, then I'd start worrying about that. If it's just 2 weeks, or maybe it's going a lot longer than it should. Most ales, they should ferment out pretty much within 5 days or so. And if they're going a lot longer than that, and then you leave them for a couple extra days, and then they're good. But if they're going and going and going and going, a lot of times it was because of bad pitch of yeast. The yeast weren't healthy enough, or you didn't pitch enough, or the environment wasn't quite right for the yeast, and they're just it's a sluggish fermentation. It isn't really finishing up. That can happen as well. So you got to make sure that you've got the right pitch of clean, healthy yeast, and I think that addresses those problems.
So here's the only thing I want to add, because I've asked this question, and I got a slightly different answer. What you had always asked me back was, how many bubbles are we talking here?
Right. Well,
and if it's erratic, like you ended up telling me, a lot of times if you dry hop a beer, for example, you just kind of end up with some other gas in there. It's caught in the hops, whatever else. And it's still going to every now and then release something.
Yeah, that's true. If everything, if you're checking everything else and you're like, well, no, I pitched, the right amount of clean, healthy yeast. It was a ripper. It, fermented really well. And now I'm just having to notice a bubble every now and then. It could be that, the room's getting warmer and the CO2 is going to come out of solution because, as the beer warms up, that'll off gas. So, it could be changes in temperature. It's getting colder at night, warmer during the day. And so at night, it's, drawing in some air. And then during the day, you're looking at it and you see a bubbling. And you're like, oh, boy, it's still fermenting, because you're only looking at it during the daytime when it's warmer. So that kind of thing. I think, that's an excellent point, Justin. It may be other factors. Vibrations will cause, bubbles. You walk up to the fermenter to look at it, and the vibration of your footsteps across a wood floor causes the fermenter to jiggle a little bit, and then CO2 bubbles come out. So every time you go to look at it, you see some CO2 bubbles.
Yeah.
So that's an excellent point. So it may just be, a false indicator.
Okay.
All right, let's take a short break, and when we come back, we'll get to more of your questions right after this.
Williams Brewing is your online resource for prompt delivery of quality home brewing supplies. Since 1979, Williams Brewing has offered the finest equipment and freshest ingredients and the best customer service in the business. Cut hours off your brewing sessions by using one of our 11 varieties of famous Williams malt extract. Our Williams Belgian Pale Extract is mashed with pure Belgian two-row malt and a small percentage of Belgian wheat malt for an authentic Belgian character you just can't get from other extracts. Or check out our unique fermenters, 2.5-gallon kegs, paintball tank-based draft beer equipment, bottling aids, and much more. We even have our own line of precision hydrometers. Go to WilliamsBrewing.com to browse our vast selection. That's WilliamsBrewing.com. Orders placed by 3:30 p.m. Pacific Time ship the same day. Brewing is easy. The Williams way.
Hello?
Hey, Drew, it's Push. You want to do some lunch?
Oh, can. I'm reading something important.
What?
Hello?
John, it's Push.
Hey, this is John, and I'm busy reading right now, so please...
What is going on?
This is Sven.
Hey, you busy?
Yeah, I am. I'm reading Gordon's new book.
From Brewers Publications and the only homebrewer to win the coveted National Homebrew Competition Ninkasi Award 3 times, comes a complete look at technical, practical, and creative homebrewing. Brewing Better Beer by Gordon Strong.
What sets this book apart is its insistent focus on what's important for the homebrewer. Like a great beer, it's extremely well balanced. A mix of technical, practical, and creative advice that, if taken to heart, will make your beer a whole lot better.
You'll learn Gordon's techniques and philosophy, recipes and tips to take your homebrew to the next level. Brewing Better Beer, master lessons for advanced homebrewers. Proudly available now from Brewers Publications.
Downtown Joe's, located in the historic Oberon building in beautiful downtown Napa, California, offers an award-winning brew pub experience from 8:30 a.m. to 1 a.m. every day. For 15 years at the corner of 2nd and Main, Downtown Joe's has been voted Best Night Spot 7 times and Best Brew Pub for the last 4 years in a row. Brewmaster Colin Kaminsky's handcrafted ales, like his Tail Wagon Amber Ale and Double Secret Probation IPA, are the perfect accent to riverside dining, live music, and a relaxing outdoor patio. Don't miss the Beer of the Month, special rotating taps, and the BN Army Member Special. Wear your BN gear, get 10% off your beer. Visit downtownjoes.com to make reservations, peruse their extensive calendar of events, or just read more about their fantastic beers. Come enjoy the fine beer, food, and music. Downtown Joe's, the award-winning brew pub where you'll feel at home.
Hi, I'm Jamel Zanishev, and in addition to my work on the Brewing Network, I write the Style Profile column in every issue of Brew Your Own magazine.
Hi, I'm Sean Paxton, and when I'm not prepping for the Home Brewed Chef on the Brewing Network, you can find me writing articles on how to cook with your home brew for Brew Your Own magazine.
Greetings, cretins. This is John Palmer, and when I'm not writing for Brew Your Own, I'm reading it.
John Palmer, Sean Paxton, Jamil Zanishev. If you love listening to them on the Brewing Network, you'll love reading their articles, tips, and recipes in the pages of Brew Your Own magazine. Join Jamil, John, and Sean 8 times a year in Brew Your Own. And when you subscribe to BYO on the Brewing Network website, half of your subscription price goes right back to the BN to support great beer and food programming. So sign up for Brew Your Own magazine through the BN website today so you can listen and read your way to better homebrew.
Hi, this is Push from the Brewing Network, and I want to tell you about the Brewmaster's Warehouse and how you can get 10% off your next order. I'm a pretty techie guy, but I've never seen an online store like this. It's awesome. Go to brewmasterswarehouse.com and click on Brew Builder. You can whip up a custom recipe so easily even Sven could do it. Seriously, it's slick. You can share your recipe with your own logo and notes to the Brewmaster's database if you want. And the best part, it keeps a running tally of the beer you're building while you're doing it. Then, bam, click Buy Recipe, and your cart is filled and ready to go with helpful suggestions in case you forgot something. This thing is amazing. Brewmaster's Warehouse is run the way a home brewer would do it, with great service, fast turnaround, and $6.99 flat rate shipping. Brewmaster's Warehouse and the Brew Builder blew me away. Check it out today at brewmasterswarehouse.com. I'm serious. And don't forget to put BN Army in the discount code box for 10% off your order. Check out brewmasterswarehouse.com. Cheers.
You're listening to the Brewing Network.
Back to the beer guys that make other beer guys look like wine guys. Brew strong.
All right, we're back. Let me tell you about another fine sponsor of ours, adamandeve.com. Fellows, are you looking to spice things up in the bedroom? Been fantasizing about surprising your lover with an adventurous new toy or adult movie? Well, here's your offer. Here's an offer you won't be able to resist. Go to adamandeve.com, and for a limited time only, you'll get 50% off just about any item. But that's not all. Oh, no. When you select your one item at 50% off, you'll also receive 3 free adult DVDs for a little inspiration, plus a free extra gift so essential we can't mention on the radio. And to top it all off, we'll even throw in free shipping on your entire order. And no, we're not teasing. So check out adamandeve.com today for this special offer. Get 50% off one item when you type Jamil, Jamil, for the offer code upon checkout. When you do, you'll get the 3 free DVDs, you get a free extra gift, and you will get free shipping. Just use the offer code JAMIL at adamandeve.com. You know, a sponsor of ours, they help pay for the show, so if you get a chance and you have needs along those lines, go check it out. It's a good company, and products for those into it. It'll help support the show. So use that offer code Jamil, JAMIL, at adamandeve.com. All right, we're doing a live Q&A show.
Yeah, I got a lot of live questions coming in the chat too, guys. I'm trying to balance your live questions with the emails.
And if we don't get to your live question, just send it into brewstrong at thebrewingnetwork.com if we don't get to it during the live, and we will get it into the next Q&A. Just put Q&A in the subject for the email, and that'll help flag it for the shows.
I've got a stack in front of me, so we'll get to it. Okay, here's one of the emails. Brian from New Hampshire says, I've recently been doing some reading on how to ferment and carbonate my beer at the same time. This seems like a really cool idea. So my questions are, how do I know what to set the PSI at? Also, what's the easiest way to separate the beer from the trub then? I think this topic would make for a great show. Brew Strong from Brian. Good questions, I thought, about a traditional style of brewing, right?
Well, that's one of the things that they do in a professional brewery is, cap the tank at a certain. They'll be checking the gravity of the tank, and I think they do this at Gordon Biersch even. It gets down to a certain reading, and they know where the beer's going to finish at. They know how much sugar is left to be fermented, and they'll go ahead and cap that tank and then let carbonation build up naturally. And they can do it in the pro breweries because they have an easy way to dump material from the bottom of the tank. They have pressure-rated vessels that won't explode on them. They have pressure relief valves. So all that's really important. If you're doing this at home, make sure that you're doing it in a safe manner because the pressure could build up to where something like a glass carboy or something like quite dangerous. So you got to be careful of that.
But you could do it in a corny keg, right?
Oh, certainly you can. The corny kegs, just make sure your pressure relief's working on that. They're rated to, most of those I think are rated 125 psi, so far more than the yeast will produce. Because the problem with this is you're not going to do it during the beginning of fermentation. This is just for the very end, and the problem with building up CO2 pressure is that it's very rough on the yeast. The higher the concentration of CO2 dissolved in the liquid, the harsher it is on the yeast. So if you want to repitch the yeast, et cetera, et cetera. Also, if you were to do this early on in fermentation, it's going to affect the development of esters. It's going to affect the amount that the yeast will attenuate to. So you really need to be taking readings of your beer as you go, and it would be very difficult to do for beers you haven't brewed before. So if you know exactly where the beer is going to finish every time, which you have to really have good control over your process and your pitching rates and all that, to get a beer to finish always at the same point each time, then you could backtrack from there and say, okay, when it reaches this point, I'm going to go ahead and cap that tank and let it build up CO2. So it's doable. It's just for most homebrewers, it's more effort than it's worth, and that you really need to know your process.
All right. Here's a quick one from our old friend Blubberglop, who's in the chat room in Canada there. Quick question for Jamil. Have you ever used lavender in a Belgian wit?
No, I haven't.
I kind of think it sounds like an interesting idea.
I do too.
Yeah.
Well, I believe the brewery has used lavender in some of their beers.
Oh, yeah. Down in, where are they, Placentia?
Yeah, Placentia.
Yeah.
Down
Placenta,
here in L.A.
I never know how to do that.
Yeah. Who names a town like,
Yeah. Yeah, I think you're right. I think I have had a lavender beer of theirs.
Yeah.
All right, Blobber, if you make it to NHC in San Diego, maybe that could be your research beer, but I'd love to try one of yours if you used it.
Yeah, that's a great idea. It could be quite interesting. I would definitely go for that, especially with that kind of pillowy, soft malt, all that. I think that with the trick is going to be getting just the right level. I mean, you want it to where you can notice it in the background, but it's not overwhelming because I think that'd be disgusting. But,
yeah.
If you had just it's like I get a hint of lavender. That would be really cool.
Okay.
Yeah, I'd like to try it too.
Yeah, I can tell you just like flowers on your pillow, though.
I do. What you don't know about your friend Jamil Zainasheff.
Aren't you guys bunking at the Cleveland International Beer Fest?
I don't know, are we?
Palmer could leave flowers on your pillow if you are. Actually, we could just get him a key and do it anyway.
Right.
Even if you're not.
I'll leave you something other than a chocolate on yours, yes. It'll be brown, but it won't be a chocolate.
Right.
A little note saying, I couldn't find lavender flower. I found barley flower instead.
Yeah. Okay.
Good question, Blobber.
R. Hastings, also in the chat, wants me to ask you, how late is too late for yeast? I was using Jamil's pitching rate calculator for a vial of yeast that is about a month past its best by date.
Mm-hmm.
The calculator said the viability was at 10%.
Right.
How many times will I need to step this up using a starter?
It gets iffy, when you get past the best by date. And, the 10% is as low as that calculator will go as far as viability goes. And it's going to depend a lot on, how that yeast was handled before it got to you and how you've handled it since you've had it. If it went through hot shipping, things like that, if it sat out at the homebrew shop for a day and got warm, viability is going to be much lower. If it was, fresh from, the factory to your homebrew shop, and you picked it up immediately, and it's just been sitting in your nice temperature-controlled fridge for a while, might be, your viability may be, 25% or 30%. Hard to say for certain at that point. The thing to do is to go ahead and make a starter with it and see how much yeast it appears you get off of that. If you get if you've done a lot of starters, you kind of know. Just make your standard 1 liter or 2 liter starter and just see if you got just a little bit of yeast. You're pretty low. If you're getting, if it looks like normal, then you're probably 50-60% viability. Hard to say, and it depends on strain too. Some strains are much more resilient, yeah, and will they'll last a lot longer. So, and some they die really quick. And there's just nothing you can do about it.
Okay. All right, a lot of yeast questions. I got another one here. This might be our official Q&A yeast show so far. Let's see. Brew Guy wrote in to the brewstrong@thebrewingnetwork.com email and said, just looking for a little clarification on the temps you use with lager yeast strains.
Mm-hmm.
He says, I've heard of pitching cool and letting it warm up slightly over the fermentation schedule, but I've received some conflicting information on how much to let the temp climb and on what type of schedule. I'm looking at trying my first lager this summer in a temperature-controlled environment, of course, Jamil, and wanted a little more clarification on how to best use the yeast. Thanks for all the information, books, and podcasts from you guys. Keep up the work. Brew Strong from Brew Guy.
Well, what I like to do, with lagers is pitch cooler, 45 degrees Fahrenheit, and then let it rise up to like 50 degrees Fahrenheit. And the question a lot of people have is, what is the time frame on that? And really what I'm doing is using a cooler temperature just for the yeast growth phase, which should be through within, 24 hours with, proper pitch yeast and, healthy yeast. I think, within 24 hours that should be done. And so at the end of 24 to 48 hours, I want to be at 50 degrees Fahrenheit, and then I let that go through the main of fermentation, and towards like the last third or quarter of fermentation, I go ahead and let the temperature rise up again from there. You can let that rise a few degrees from there, and then that'll give you your kind of natural diacetyl rest, and should work out quite well. Did that answer the question? Did I leave some parts off?
Well, yeah, I guess so to summarize, you're pitching at 45 and letting that rise over about 24 hours to 50, so about a 5-degree climb. And then your main fermentation is going to run from 2 to 4 days. Right. Your primary, and then after that 2 to 4 day period of primary fermentation, you're going to let it start rising again up to say 55 or 60, 55 probably.
55.
Yeah,
right.
And then that kind of finishes out the fermentation.
Right. It helps the yeast be more active towards the end of fermentation when they tend to be slowing down, and helps them reduce some of those fermentation byproducts. So that's why I like to raise it there at the end. It helps them attenuate fully. You want those yeast as active as possible towards the end. And a lot of times people will do almost exactly the opposite. they will pitch the yeast into, hot wort, it'll be 60, 70 degrees, and then they'll chill it down to 50, and then, they'll keep it in a fridge that isn't controlled by the temperature of the fermentation, but rather, ambient temperature. And as the yeast start to slow down, the fermentation actually gets colder because they're not producing any heat anymore, or less heat. And, so the fermentation gets colder, and you're ending up like chasing it down and tamping it down and going against the yeast. So you really want to kind of do it the opposite of that.
Okay, and here's a quick one, I think, that we can get in here because I know that you do this method anyway, Jamil. Ice Climber in the chat room says, I use a pressure canner to prepare wort for starters in 2-liter jars. Mm-hmm. He's in the chat room here, and he says, I just add DME and yeast nutrient to the... can I just add DME and yeast nutrient to the jar with water and not boil, and just let the pressure canner take care of the boiling? Or do I have to boil it first?
That's how I've been doing it. I've done it both ways. It can be a little messy to add the DME, especially when you're doing a lot of jars, because things start getting moist. But yeah, those quart mason jars, they hold. When you fill them to the neck, it's somewhere around 830 mils of water with the DME. And so what I do is I put in like 83 grams of DME, and I fill it to the neck with water, and and a pinch of or just a few grains of nutrient. Put the lid on and put in the pressure cooker. So it works quite well. The other way to do it is just make yourself up a bucket of DME and warm water, and mix it, add your nutrients to the whole thing, stir it up really well, and then just fill jars off a bottling bucket. That works real well. The issue that you'll sometimes get when you're doing the pressure cooker and the DME in the jar is the DME will clump, and if you don't shake it up a little bit and get the DME to dissolve, sometimes you'll kind of find a baked on clump of DME in the jar. So, but generally it works quite well.
Sounds so much easier to do it that way.
It is. I mean, you just weigh it out, and and it's 6 of one, half a dozen of the other. You don't really have to do anything with the bottling bucket. You don't have to sanitize it really or anything like that. You just rinse it out, and then just pour your whole thing of DME in there, and then you can add it as much water as measured. Or you can just check the gravity, add a little bit more water or whatever, and you're like, okay, there it is. And then just run it into the jars. And that's real fast, too. So that's what I did, actually, the last time I made starter wort, was I did it that way. So
got it.
Whatever works for you.
Okay.
Palmer, do you do any canning like that?
No, I don't. I mean, I usually whip it up the last minute. But, if I can see where doing it ahead of time with the pressure cooker like that would save a lot of effort. And especially the fact that cold water dissolves DME better than hot because it doesn't clump. And you avoid those chunks. So, you could put the DME in the jar, pour in cold water, put the cap on, and throw it in the pressure cooker, and that would save the clumping issue, because I've spent many an hour stirring DME on the stove trying to get it to dissolve totally.
Interesting. All right, let's take a short break, and when we come back, we'll wrap it up with just a couple more questions. Back after this.
When you hear Blickman Engineering, think innovation, passion, quality, and customer service. Blickman gear is designed by brewers to give you a sense of pride in your equipment. At Blickman, they know what makes brewing a pain and build gear that makes it fun. Like the intuitive beer gun, a completely different approach to filling bottles. The Therminator Wort Chiller, a new take on a plate chiller that's sized for flow, performance, and the high groundwater temps homebrewers face every day. The Brewmometer, a brilliant weldless thermometer design with brewing parameters right on the dial. The Autosparge, ultimate simplicity for preventing an overflow or running your mash tun dry. And much more, like the modular top-tier brewing stand, conical fermenters, and their Boilermaker brew pots. with more cutting-edge equipment coming soon. Keep up with the latest from Blickman at blickmanengineering.com and stay on the cutting edge.
I love beer. I'm a brewer. I brew it. I drink it. It's in my blood, really. I'm that guy that pours malt extract on his pancakes. I wish I could just put a good brew in my pocket and take it with me.
Now you can. Hey, brewers and beer lovers, why not eat the energy bar invented by a home brewer using the same ingredients in your brew? Introducing Brew Bar Energy Bars, spelled B-R-U-B-A-R. Malt, oats, vanilla, nuts, cinnamon, coconut. You've put them in your beer, and you'll find them in your Brew Bar Energy Bar. All natural, made with simple ingredients chosen for the highest quality. They're new, different, and have a rich malty flavor and smooth, moist texture, just like a fine craft brew. You can find Brew Bar Energy Bars at brewbar.com or find a retailer near you. And if you are a retailer, you should contact them and find out how you can sell Brew Bar Energy Bars. Check them out at brewbar.com. That's BRUBAR.com. And follow them on Facebook at facebook.com/brewbar. Remember, it's in your Brew Bar Energy Bar because it's in your brew.
Hey, what are you doing, man?
Writing a review of WLP 400.
What? You're reviewing yeast?
Yeah. White Labs has home brewer reviews of all their strains. Are you new to these interwebs? Check it out.
That's awesome.
White Labs, your source for great yeast, invites all brewers to visit whitelabs.com to read and write your own reviews of all their yeast strains. Get real-world tips and tricks from other brewers who have made the most of their vials and post your own experiences. It's another way White Labs brings you closer to the best yeast on the planet.
And send. There you go.
You misspelled flocculate, dude.
What? Mother...
White Labs. It's all in the vial.
There's an app on the iPhone for just about everything, including beer. Apps for finding a pint of beer. Apps that look like you're drinking a pint of beer. And now, there's an app for brewing a pint of beer. Introducing BrewPal, the most all-inclusive beer brewing app for professionals and hobbyists that fits in your pocket and goes wherever you do. Recipe formulation that can be imported and exported with a customizable database. Mash and sparge calculations, yeast pitching rates, carbonation tables, and more. Available right now for less coin than a pound of grain. See BrewPal in action at brewpal.info and download it for your iPhone at a special introductory price right now. BrewPal, all the brewing software you need, right in your pocket.
More Beer has been slashing prices all year. Now, it's even more free shipping for the month of May. In February, they lowered hop prices. In March, they lowered equipment prices. In April, they lowered ingredient kit prices. Now, for the month of May, only More Beer is lowering their already famous free shipping from $59 to $39. Take advantage today. Order 2 ingredient kits and get them shipped free. Order their new High Flow March pump and get it shipped free. Order most anything over $39 and get it shipped for free. More free shipping only from More Beer at morebeer.com.
This is www.thebrewingnetwork.com.
Sit down next to it, grab yourself a paper towel, and watch those yeast have sex.
You're listening to the Brewing Network.
Like the Lance Armstrong of the beer world. Except for that nut thing.
This is Brew Strong.
You know, I think I want that on my tombstone, right? Like the Lance Armstrong of the beer world. Except for that nut thing.
You know, if I can get your wife to approve it, I'll make it happen, Jamil.
All right.
But what do we have against beer nuts anyway? I mean, I think they're kind of good.
Well, and actually, now, let me indulge me while I go off track here. But recently lost a couple of friends in tragic accidents and mysterious circumstances and things like that. And so going to a few funerals, and I was with my wife at this funeral for a friend of ours, and I told her, I said, you know what just dawned on me is what I'd like to do is, have me cremated. Put me in a cardboard box or whatever the cheapest is. Get me cremated, and then, I don't know if this sounds too egotistical or what. I don't know, but have you ever read that book, Robert Heinlein, "Stranger in a Strange Land"?
No.
Okay, at the end, they end up like making a soup out of him, and they end up tasting it, and he kind of lives on through their, tasting of the eating of the soup, right? And I was thinking, well, wouldn't it be cool if I got cremated and then you took my ashes and gave it to a couple of home brewers and they made some beer with the ashes in it, and then you served it at some festival, and then you'd live on through all the people that drank the beer.
Right.
Wouldn't that be cool?
Well, except for the urination
except for the people.
people.
And except for the people drinking the beer. But, I just thought that'd be really cool. So I told my wife, I said, so have me cremated, and then if anybody asks for ashes to make a beer,
right,
you give it to them.
So, Palmer, here's my question. I don't know if you have the same one. I'm not quite sure how large of an ash vessel a human being makes.
Right.
So I wonder how many...
Palmer probably knows.
How many batches you have to spread it out before I get grossed out is my point. Because I don't want a whole chunk of you in a beer.
Right? Yeah, you want a big lump.
No,
floating around like a hot bit. Yeah,
it's gonna freak me out.
Right? No, I'm thinking. You send like a tablespoon that goes into a 10-gallon batch. It's just in the mash.
There we go.
Something like
probably
that.
A couple quarts in the mash and 7 barrels or something. We probably wouldn't notice it.
And I'd be fine with it. Yeah,
right,
and I think it's a great idea.
And wouldn't that be kind of cool?
Yeah.
You live on through the people that you love most.
Definitely.
Yeah.
It'd be almost like bacon beer.
Right. All cooked down and ashified, and
now we're left to ponder what flavor Jamil adds to a
right,
beer.
Exactly. Oh, it's very Jamil-like.
Yeah.
Tastes like ass. Tastes like asshole. Yeah, that's him. That's it.
That must be a Jamil beer.
Yeah, that's the flavor right there.
Oh boy.
All right, let's wrap this up with one last question.
All right, let's do this. I got a quick recommendation, then we'll do a question, because this one's for Palmer. And I thought it was a good story. Joseph wrote in to the email. He said, I did as John Palmer's book said, and I boiled 3 gallons of water and then went to pour my hot wort into the fermenter.
Oh, no.
A 6.5-gallon glass carboy. My carboy broke all the way around the bottom. And so his recommendation is, I thought that might be something that Palmer wants to put into his next revision. I am not in any way complaining about the book. I really appreciate the information I learned from it. And I appreciate what I learned from the Brewing Network. But I thought you'd get a kick out of my fucked brew day. The show must go on. I'm using my 5-gallon carboy now for primary fermentation. But it's just a revision recommendation, Paul.
Yeah. I could have sworn I put "and cool" at the bottom of that paragraph.
Maybe.
Yeah, I think it got removed in editing.
For space, maybe.
Yeah, for space. Well, and that brings up a great point, I think. You got to use some common sense when you're doing things like brewing, because it can be dangerous if you don't. And, sometimes you just need to think this through. A lot of times I'll get email from people and they're just like, so how do I do this? You said this, that, the other thing. And I'm thinking, how are you reading into that, what you are? It's just like, no, you're overthinking it. You're thinking way too hard about how this is done. It's just, think about cooking. Think about, common sense in cooking. And a lot of that applies. And just use that methodology and say, oh, okay.
Yeah.
It's like when they say, stir the ravioli, they're not talking about, turning the stove around. They're talking about get a spoon and just stir it.
Yeah. Yeah. Don't use a whisk.
Right. All of a sudden, people are asking, should I use a whisk? Should I use a motorboat engine? Should I use, what?
I have this theory of why we do that. It's just that we've had so many wonderful beers. That we have high standards for ourselves.
Right.
And so we're so nervous about every detail because of our high standards.
Absolutely make the best beer possible. And I applaud them for that. But, sometimes, don't overthink it. Yeah. Sometimes the simple answer is the one you're looking for.
Okay, let's try to fit this one in. Baruz is in the chat room. Said he's had this question for you guys for a while. On Can You Brew It? The guys often talk about whirlpooling for X amount of minutes. Lately we've been talking about extended whirlpools for hop utilization and things like that. In the earlier style shows, Jamil and John Plisse always talk about cooling wort quickly. So what's the benefit of whirlpooling? What's the trade-off of not cooling quickly and keeping the wort hot?
Well, generally the commercial brewers are whirlpooling to maximize the amount of wort they can extract from the kettle, to compact down the pile of material, and they want to transfer as much wort out of the kettle to the fermenter as possible, because that's money. In home brewing, you don't necessarily need to do that. So the problem with whirlpooling is it tends to degrade, the hop aromatics, tends to blow off the hop aromatics. So that's why you don't want to whirlpool hot. And that's why, we would recommend chill that wort very quickly, and you can trap in a lot of those hop aromatics and hop flavors. When you whirlpool hot, anything, past about 170, 175 Fahrenheit, you're still isomerizing the hop, alpha acids. It's, adding bittering. It's, volatilizing some of the aromatics. So that's kind of the drawback there. And the positive is, you get a clearer wort at the end of the, out of the kettle, and, compact the true pile and things like that. What would you add to that, John?
I think one point to make is that the reason professional brewers are not cooling the wort quickly is because they can't. I mean, they've got this giant volume of wort to cool.
Gallons, right?
Yeah. And I mean, they've got good plate chillers, but they can only run, so much volume through there so fast. So they've got this 1,000 gallons sitting there hot. What do we do with it while we wait for it to go through the chiller? Well, let's spin it and add some more hops and get a little more hop aromatics into it just before we chill. It's kind of an innovative way of addressing the problem of what do we do with all this hot wort. Which at the homebrewer scale, we just don't have that issue to drive us to do it. We can add our knockout addition of hops, and then cool the whole thing within 10 minutes. Whereas at the scale they're working at, it's going to take an hour.
Well, and that's the thing. On Can You Brew It, we're trying to mimic what they're doing in the commercial brewery, and sometimes we do it different ways, just depending on who's brewing. But we're trying to mimic that same character, and that's possible in the homebrew level. But like John, like you're saying, you can submerge a giant coil of metal inside your wort and rapidly knock down the temperature. Makes a big difference.
And real quick, just as a follow-up, he wants to know, is DMS an issue with extending the whirlpool, with keeping wort hot in the whirlpool too?
Generally, if you do a 90-minute boil, no.
Okay.
And you're not using lightly kiln malts like Pilsner malts and things like that.
Yeah, that's the other aspect to the whole question that occurred to me at the beginning when he asked it, was the DMS issue, as Jamil says, has a lot to do with the type of malt you select and the fact that they are doing generally a 90-minute boil and volatilizing all the precursor off. So as that hot wort is sitting there waiting to go through the exchanger, most of the precursor has been boiled away, and it's not converting to DMS while it sits.
Okay. Any time for one more? You got the clock in front of you.
We're over.
We're over?
By 8 minutes, but if you want to slip one more in, sure.
One slip in. When substituting a percentage of your base grains out for some simple sugar to help in drying out a beer, is there a ratio of malt to simple sugar so that we can still maintain our targeted OG? That's from Jason in Hood River, Oregon, who wrote in. So I guess maybe he can you go overboard with the simple sugar? Is that what he's asking? Is there a ratio to stick to?
Well, you can, but I think it sounded like he was asking how much malt do you replace with simple sugar?
Yeah.
And, 1 pound and a half to a pound or something like that. But it depends on how efficient your mashing is, and what type of base malt you're using will determine how much simple sugar you would add and the type of simple sugar you're adding. As far as ratios go, 10% generally is enough to dry out a beer. So if you really want to push it, you can start going higher. The problem is if you go too high, you start getting also a sweetness back at the end of the beer. When you get with too high a ratio of simple sugars.
So, Jamil, are you saying 10% of the gravity points, or are you saying 10% of the weight of the grain bill?
I see. That's why Palmer's on this show.
Oh, yeah.
You ask the tough questions.
Earn
your keep. It's 10% of the grist or 10% of the gravity points. It's pretty close to the same thing. So I wouldn't I wouldn't go 10% of the base malt. I mean, you could, I guess, but 10% of the gravity points or 10% of the grist. Should be about the same.
All right, we'll save the rest for the next Q&A show.
All right. Good show.
It was.
Good questions.
Yeah, really good questions.
Good work from the chat room. Thank you. And if we didn't get to your questions in the chat room, just send them in. Brewstrong at thebrewingnetwork.com. We'll get to them all eventually, and that's where we get a lot of our show ideas and all our other goodies that we do on this show.
Yep. We'll be doing this for years yet, I think so.
we Great. We'll be old. We'll be feeble. But we'll still be doing it.
Just can't wait till you guys get even crotchetier.
We'll be doing the Waldorf and Statler thing,
I love it.
Well, and if you want to hear us continue to do this show, what you need to do, get yourself to thebrewingnetwork.com. You'll see a few things there. The store, pick up some goodies in there. That helps the Brewing Network. You also see a link to Brew Your Own Magazine. There's a banner there. Click on that to subscribe to Brew Your Own Magazine. When you do, and you do it through thebrewingnetwork.com, the Brewing Network gets half of that subscription fee to the Brewing Network. So you get a great magazine. The Brewing Network gets a nice donation on your behalf, and it really helps keep things like this show going. So check that out. And a lot of other good stuff there. So don't be afraid to click about on thebrewingnetwork.com. Until later, brew strong.
Brew strong, everybody.